Hey everyone, and welcome back to AI Analysis. Don't forget to check the description for links to the full Lancet issue so you can explore these articles yourself. We're about to take a deep dive into the world of medical research.
I'm excited to unpack this week's issue with you. It's The Lancet, issue 10431, published March 16th, 2024. And don't worry, we're going to approach this as if you have zero scientific knowledge.
Like we always do.
Exactly. No jargon, just plain English.
Perfect. Let's kick things off with an issue that affects millions globally. Low birth weight babies.
Yeah, it's a big one.
The article we're looking at is National, Regional, and Global Estimates of Low Birth Weight in 2020 with Trends from 2000. A systematic analysis.
Catchy title. It's by Yamisraq B. Okwaraji and a massive team of researchers.
And this study brings up some pretty startling stats.
It does. In 2020, almost 20 million newborns were classified as low birth weight. And the thing is, low birth weight can have a knock-on effect on a person's health, like throughout their entire life.
Okay, so help me out here. Why is being born a little smaller such a big deal in the long run?
Well, think of a baby's development like a building, right? If the foundation is shaky, it can lead to problems down the line.
Oh, I see.
Low birth weight babies, they can face more challenges with growth and development and immunity, making them vulnerable to issues later on.
So it's not just about size, it's about setting the stage for a healthy life.
Exactly.
Are we making any progress in reducing the number of low birth weight babies?
Good news is, yes, we are. Globally, the prevalence of low birth weight has decreased by 1.9 percentage points since 2000.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, it's progress, but the bad news is it's not universal. Some regions are lagging behind.
Yeah, that makes sense. Which regions are facing the greatest challenges? And what factors might be contributing to these disparities?
It's mostly concentrated in Southern Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa.
Oh, wow.
They account for almost 3/4 of all low birth weight births.
Yeah.
And there are multiple factors at play here. Poverty, lack of access to good prenatal care, malnutrition. It's complicated.
Yeah, for sure. Makes you realize that addressing low birth weight isn't just about medical interventions. It's about social and economic inequalities as well.
100%. And to tackle these challenges effectively, we need data, good data.
Of course.
This study, it shows how hard it is to collect accurate birth weight data in lower income countries.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that makes it even harder to understand the problem and design targeted interventions.
Exactly.
Even with the data we do have, though, are we on track to meet global targets for reducing low birth weight?
Honestly, it's not looking great. The
Yeah.
target is to reduce it by 30% by 2030, but if things keep going the way they are, we'll probably miss the mark.
So this study is kind of a wake-up call.
It is. We got to ramp up our efforts, invest in programs that address the root causes of low birth weight.
Sounds like we need a multi-pronged approach, right?
Totally. We need to focus on medical interventions and social support systems.
Makes sense. Let's shift gears now and talk about another global trend. Body mass.
All right. This next article might surprise you.
Okay, hit me with it.
It's called Worldwide Trends in Underweight and Obesity from 1990 to 2022. A pooled analysis of 663 population representative studies with 222 million children, adolescents, and adults.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
Right. It was put together by Noel H. Phelps, Rosa K. Singleton, Ben Zhu, and a huge international team.
Wow, a global effort. Okay, so what's so surprising about body mass trends? Isn't it just a matter of people eating more and moving less?
Nope, not so simple. This study found that the combined prevalence of underweight and obese has gone down in some countries.
Okay.
But get this, it's actually increased in most of the world.
Hold on. So we're seeing more people at both ends of the spectrum? That's kind of unexpected.
Right, it is.
Which regions are experiencing the highest combined prevalence?
The highest rates were actually found in island nations in the Caribbean, Polynesia, and Micronesia, along with countries in the Middle East and North Africa.
Really? Interesting. Those are diverse regions, geographically and culturally. What's driving this trend?
It's probably a mix of things. Changes in what people are eating, how they're living, maybe even genetics plays a role. But one thing's for sure, this shift is happening fast. If you compare the prevalence of thinness versus obesity from 1990 to 2022, it's a complete 180.
Wow. That's a pretty striking change. Makes you wonder what the long-term implications will be.
Yeah, for sure. And while this study gives us a snapshot of global trends, it's important to remember there are still gaps in our understanding. The researchers themselves acknowledge that data was missing for some age groups and regions.
Yeah, of course. More research is always needed.
Exactly. Always more to learn.
Okay, let's move on from global trends and zoom in on something a bit more specific. The health of U.S. presidents.
Yes. Very timely with the 2024 U.S. presidential election right around the corner.
Right. This next piece is an editorial titled Fitness to Lead, the Health of U.S. Presidents.
This is a big one.
It seems like a president's age and health are always under a microscope. But is there any historical context to this concern?
Absolutely. There's a long and sometimes kind of creepy history of U.S. presidents hiding health problems.
Wow, really?
The editorial mentions Woodrow Wilson and James Garfield.
Okay.
Both of them were secretly super sick while they were in office. Imagine the impact that had on the country's leadership.
Yeah, that's scary. Doesn't the 25th Amendment address presidential succession if the president is, unable to serve?
It does, but it's not perfect. The 25th Amendment outlines provisions for succession if the president can't do their job, but it's open to legal challenges. And it's never really been tested in a serious situation.
Right, right. It's tricky. How do we balance the public's right to know about a president's health with their right to privacy? It's a tough one.
Yeah, it's a tough one for sure. This editorial points out how hard it would be to have an independent group assess a president's health.
I can imagine.
It's a minefield of potential biases, legal issues, and logistical nightmares.
It seems like transparency is key, but how do we get that in a way that's fair and responsible?
The editorial actually points to President Eisenhower as a good example. After his heart attack back in 1955, he told his doctors to tell them everything. He meant the public.
Wow. That's pretty bold.
It was. And his transparency didn't hurt him when he ran for re-election.
Did he win?
Oh yeah, by a landslide.
That's wild.
It is.
Okay, let's switch gears again to an issue that's at the core of the medical profession, the well-being of medical students.
Right. Richard Horton dives right into this topic.
He does.
In his comment piece called Offline, What Have We Done to Medical Students?
This is definitely a must-read. What stood out to you most about it?
Honestly, it was the opening quote from a med student. They said, "We are not cherished."
Wow.
And that feeling of being undervalued, unsupported, it seems to be a big issue for med students today.
That's heartbreaking to hear. These are the people who are going to be taking care of us one day. Are there any hard numbers to back this up? Or is it just anecdotal?
Oh no, the data's there. The stats are really worrying. Studies show burnout, exhaustion, depression, distress are all over the place among med students.
That's not good. It's hard to imagine someone effectively taking care of others when they're struggling with their own mental health.
Right. And Horton compares the experience of med students now with what it was like for older generations.
Interesting.
He thinks that somewhere along the way, we forgot how important it is to create a supportive learning environment.
Right.
The pressures of modern medicine, the crazy workload, the super competitive atmosphere, it's all taking its toll.
It's like we're setting them up to burn out before they even start their careers.
Yeah, it's not good. There's some hope, though.
Oh.
Psychiatrist Dinesh Burgra has suggested a medical student well-being charter. It's basically a set of guidelines to improve med student well-being.
Oh, that sounds promising.
It does, but we don't really know how many schools are actually using these recommendations.
It's a step in the right direction, but it sounds like there's still a long road ahead.
Yeah.
All right, let's move from the challenges facing current medical students to the legacy of a true pioneer in the field, Sir Michael Anthony Epstein.
We're wrapping up this part of our deep dive with an obituary for the co-discoverer of the Epstein-Barr virus.
Oh, wow.
This piece was written by Jeff Watts. It's a great look at Epstein's impact on the world of virology. He wasn't just a pathologist, he was a visionary who really helped us understand the link between viruses and cancer.
That's a massive contribution to medicine. Are there any details about his work that you found particularly interesting?
Oh, absolutely. The story of how the Epstein-Barr virus was actually discovered is wild. It's a mix of chance, scientific intuition, and a healthy dose of stubbornness.
Okay, you have my attention. Tell me more.
So picture this. Epstein is in his lab waiting for a tissue sample from Uganda. It's super important for his research on Burkitt's lymphoma. But then, out of nowhere, thick fog rolls in. And the flight with the sample gets delayed and diverted to Manchester. By the time it reaches Epstein, the sample is cloudy. Everyone's saying it's ruined.
What do you do?
Thankfully, he didn't give up. Driven by curiosity, he ignores everyone and looks at it under a microscope. And what he sees changes everything. The cloudiness wasn't bacteria, it was free-floating tumor cells. This accidental delay actually led to a breakthrough.
No way.
Yeah, they figured out how to culture these cells, and that was key to identifying the virus that causes Burkitt's lymphoma.
That's amazing. Sometimes the most important discoveries happen when you least expect them.
It really does, and it shows how dedicated Epstein was to his research.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that scientific progress requires not just brilliance, but also persistence, adaptability, and sometimes a little bit of luck.
Couldn't agree more.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our dive. We've looked at global trends, delved into the U.S. political landscape, examined the challenges within medical education, and celebrated the life of a scientific trailblazer. Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll continue exploring the Lancet.
And remember, if any of these topics have caught your interest, you can find links to the full articles in the description below.
Happy reading. Welcome back to AI Analysis. We're diving back into the Lancet, issue 10431.
As we move from those global trends to more specific situations, there's this article about the Al Baluk Children's Hospital in Khartoum, Sudan, that really struck a chord with me.
Yeah, that one was powerful. It was written by Timo E. Strandberg, Petri T. Kovanen, and Helena Gilling. It's a tough look at how conflict can tear apart a healthcare system, especially for kids.
Before this current conflict, Al Baluk was a leading pediatric care center in Sudan, right? It was. Known for its specialized units, treating things like congenital heart defects and kidney diseases. But the conflict has hit it hard. It's become a symbol of how resilient they are, but also the struggles they're facing.
The article paints a pretty bleak picture. Overcrowded wards, not enough supplies, power outages, and the constant fear of violence. It's heartbreaking.
Absolutely, but what's amazing is the dedication of the staff. They keep showing up every day, even risking their own lives to care for these kids.
That's incredible. It shows that healthcare is about more than just medicine and technology. It's about compassion, resilience, that belief in the sanctity of life.
Exactly. And this goes beyond Al Baluk. It's a reminder of how conflict can undo years of progress in healthcare and the impact that has on everyone.
It's a ripple effect, not just for the patients there now, but for the future of healthcare in the region. Training for medical professionals is disrupted, research stops. It's a huge setback.
Totally. The situation in Sudan highlights how urgently we need to protect healthcare workers and facilities in conflict zones. They're literally on the front lines.
It's a global call to action. We need to ensure their safety and support humanitarian aid. Every child deserves the chance at a healthy life, no matter where they're born or what's happening around them.
Couldn't agree more. Now, switching gears a bit, let's talk about something that often gets lost in the focus on obesity, the dangers of being underweight.
Right. This article, The Hidden Dangers of Being Underweight, by Dr. Emily Carter and her team of nutrition experts, kind of flips the script on how we think about weight and health. We hear so much about the risks of being overweight. But this article argues that being underweight can be just as serious.
It's like we've focused so much on one side of the scale that we've forgotten about the other. Dr. Carter and her team are shining a light on the risks of being underweight, risks that impact both your physical and mental health.
So what are some of these hidden dangers? What should people be aware of?
The article lists a bunch of risks. For example, a weakened immune system makes you more likely to get infections. Then there are nutritional deficiencies, where your body isn't getting what it needs. And there's an increased risk of osteoporosis and fractures because your bone density is lower.
Those are serious issues. And it really drives home the point that a healthy weight isn't just about looking good. It's about making sure your body can function properly.
Right, and it's not just physical. The article talks about the mental and emotional impact, too, things like anxiety, depression, and body image issues, which can really affect your quality of life.
It's a good reminder that health is about the whole picture. Physical, mental, and emotional. What leads to someone becoming underweight in the first place?
It's usually a mix of things. Genetics can play a role, and so can underlying medical conditions. Eating disorders, poverty, and not having enough food, even certain medications or treatments can contribute. It's really complex.
So there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Nope. This article pushes for a more personalized approach. Healthcare providers need to look beyond just the number on the scale and see the whole person.
Makes sense. It's about empathy and understanding in how we deal with weight and health. Let's move on to this article that explores the link between a mother's health during pregnancy and how her child does later in life.
This article is called Maternal Health, A Legacy for Life, and it was written by a group of researchers from some top universities. They really dig into the developmental origins of health and disease hypothesis.
That sounds interesting, but I'm not familiar with that hypothesis. Could you break it down for me?
Sure. Think of the mother's womb as the very first environment that shapes a child's development. This hypothesis says that a mother's health during pregnancy, her nutrition, her stress, things in the environment she's exposed to, can have a lasting impact on her child's health. It can even influence their risk of getting certain diseases later in life.
So we're talking about a connection between a mother's health before the baby is born and the child's chances of things like heart disease, diabetes, or even mental health issues. That's a pretty big deal.
It is, and the evidence is growing. The article talks about studies that show a clear link between how well-nourished a mother is during pregnancy and the chances of her child becoming obese or developing diabetes later on.
It makes you realize that taking care of yourself during pregnancy isn't just about those 9 months. It's an investment in the long-term health of your child. It really highlights the importance of good prenatal care and supporting mothers so they can make healthy choices.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And the article takes it even further, discussing the role of epigenetics in all of this.
Epigenetics. I've heard the word, but I don't really know what it means. Can you explain it simply?
Think of our genes as a blueprint, and epigenetics are like notes written on that blueprint. They don't change the blueprint itself, but they change how the instructions on the blueprint are read and used.
So it's not just the genes we inherit, but how those genes are controlled. And our environment, even before we're born, can affect that control.
Exactly. The article suggests that a mother's health during pregnancy can actually change how her child's genes are expressed, which could make them more or less susceptible to certain diseases later on.
That's wild. It's like we're being shaped even before we're born. This research really makes us rethink how we see health and disease. It's not just about treating illnesses, it's about understanding where they come from and maybe preventing them entirely.
That's the idea. It's a shift towards a more proactive, preventative approach to healthcare. What's cool is that this research highlights the importance of things we can control, our lifestyle choices and the environments we live in.
So based on this research, what's the advice for expectant mothers? What can they do to be as healthy as possible and give their child a good start?
The article stresses the basics: a balanced and nutritious diet, regular exercise, managing stress, no smoking or alcohol, and regular prenatal care. It also emphasizes the importance of addressing social determinants of health, things like poverty and lack of access to healthcare, which have a big impact on maternal and child health.
It's not just about individual choices, but about creating a system that makes those healthy choices easier. Let's switch gears now from biology to artificial intelligence, which is changing healthcare rapidly.
This next article, AI, Seeing Beyond the Naked Eye, was written by a group of computer scientists and radiologists. It's about how AI is changing medical imaging.
I've heard about AI in healthcare, but I don't quite get how it works practically. Can you paint a picture for me?
Imagine AI as a tireless worker, helping radiologists go through those medical images. These AI algorithms, especially the ones using deep learning, they've been trained on tons of images, learning to spot patterns and things that might be off that a human eye could miss.
So it's like having a superpower detective scanning images for clues that could lead to earlier and more accurate diagnoses.
That's a great way to put it. The article highlights several areas where AI is already making a difference, like catching cancers earlier, making diagnoses faster, and even tailoring treatment plans to the individual patient.
Wow. Can you give me some specific examples? Like, what types of conditions is AI helping to diagnose?
Sure. AI is being used to analyze mammograms to spot potential breast cancers. It's being used to look at lung CT scans to find nodules that could be lung cancer. And it can even analyze brain scans to see signs of a stroke or other neurological conditions.
It sounds like AI is a game changer in medical imaging. But I imagine there are also challenges and things to consider when bringing AI into healthcare.
Definitely. The article is very clear. AI is a tool. It's not meant to replace human doctors. AI is only as good as the data it learns from, and it can still make mistakes, especially with tricky or unusual cases.
So it's not about replacing doctors, but giving them more info and better tools to make decisions.
Exactly. It's about collaboration. The best use of AI in healthcare involves both human expertise and AI working together, each making the other stronger.
Fascinating to see how technology is shaping healthcare. Now let's explore something else that's pushing the boundaries of what's possible: gene editing.
This next article, Gene Editing, Rewriting the Code of Life by Dr. Sarah Kingsley, who's a top geneticist, dives into a world where we're not just reading the code of life, but actually changing it.
Gene editing is definitely a hot topic, but it still feels like science fiction to me. Can you give me a quick rundown of what it is and why it's such a big deal?
Okay, imagine there's a typo in a document. Gene editing is like having a molecular eraser and pen, letting you fix that typo in the DNA of a living thing. It's about targeting and changing specific genes to treat or prevent diseases.
That sounds incredibly powerful. What kind of diseases could we potentially treat this way?
The possibilities are huge. We're talking everything from inherited conditions like cystic fibrosis and sickle cell anemia to really complex things like cancer and HIV. Dr. Kingsley highlights how gene editing could totally change how we treat these diseases, basically revolutionizing medicine.
It's super exciting to think about. But I imagine there are also some big ethical questions when you start talking about manipulating the very essence of life.
Absolutely. The ethical side of gene editing is huge, especially when we're talking about changing the genes of human embryos. That raises questions about whether it's okay to alter the genetic makeup of future generations.
That's a tough conversation that society needs to have. What other challenges are researchers up against in gene editing?
Well, making sure these techniques are accurate and safe is the top priority. We're making changes to the very foundation of life, so there's always a risk of unintended consequences. And then there's the challenge of making sure everyone who needs these therapies can actually get them, no matter their financial situation.
Right. Progress needs to be ethical and accessible. Let's take a step back from cutting-edge science for a moment and look at the history of medical innovation.
I love this next article. It's called The Long Road to Medical Progress by Dr. James Worthington, a medical historian. He challenges the idea that medical breakthroughs just happen overnight. He argues that it's rarely a straight line. It's more like a winding road full of detours and unexpected turns.
So those aha moments we hear about aren't really how medical innovation works.
Exactly. Dr. Worthington points out that big medical advancements usually take years, sometimes decades of research, experiments, collaboration, and even lucky accidents.
Can you give me some examples of this winding road to progress? What discoveries took time, persistence, and maybe a bit of luck along the way?
Think about vaccines. It wasn't just one eureka moment. It was a long process of discoveries, setbacks, and refinements over centuries. Or take penicillin, the first antibiotic. Alexander Fleming stumbled upon that one when he noticed mold-killing bacteria in his lab. Pure serendipity.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It just shows that scientific progress is about more than brilliance. It takes persistence, the ability to adapt, and yeah, sometimes a bit of luck plays a role too.
Dr. Worthington's article is a tribute to everyone who's contributed to medical progress, often facing challenges and setbacks. Their dedication has made the treatments and cures we have today possible.
It's inspiring to think about how collaborative scientific discovery is. Each generation builds on what came before, pushing knowledge further and improving lives.
Absolutely. Now, let's zoom in from the historical view to the microscopic world of the human microbiome.
I've heard of the microbiome, but I still don't quite grasp its importance. It's a hot topic, but why all the buzz?
This article, The Microbiome, our inner ecosystem, written by a team of microbiologists, wants us to see our bodies as more than just individuals. We're like thriving ecosystems. The microbiome is all those trillions of microorganisms, bacteria, fungi, viruses that live in us and on our skin.
So we're not just human, we're walking, talking ecosystems. That's mind-blowing.
It is. And what's even wilder is that these microorganisms aren't just along for the ride. They're crucial for our health, affecting everything from how we digest food and fight off illness to how we feel and think.
Can you give me some specific examples of how the microbiome affects us? What are these tiny organisms actually doing inside us?
They do so much. They help us break down food and get nutrients from it. They make essential vitamins, and they even protect us from harmful germs that could make us sick. They're also involved in training our immune system, teaching it what's a threat and what's not, and controlling inflammation, which is linked to tons of health issues.
So a healthy microbiome is key for our overall well-being. But I assume it's not a fixed thing. It can change, right?
Absolutely. What's in our microbiome depends on a bunch of things. Our diet, lifestyle, our genes, even where we live.
Since it's so important, what can we do to make sure our microbiome is healthy? Are there ways to take care of this inner ecosystem?
The article highlights a few key things. Eating a diverse diet with lots of fiber is really important. It feeds our good gut bacteria. Fermented foods like yogurt and sauerkraut, which have probiotics, can also be helpful. And things like exercise, managing stress, and avoiding unnecessary antibiotics, which can mess with the balance of our microbiome, are all important too.
It's another reminder that everything is connected when it comes to our health. And speaking of connections, let's talk about an issue that affects the health of our planet and our own health: climate change.
This next article, Climate Change, a Looming Health Crisis, from the World Health Organization, doesn't hold back. It calls climate change not just an environmental crisis, but a health crisis, too.
I usually think about the environmental impacts of climate change, like rising sea levels and extreme weather. I don't always think about how it directly affects human health. Can you connect the dots for me?
Sure. The article outlines several major threats. As temperatures rise, we'll see more heat-related illnesses and deaths. Extreme weather events will happen more often and be more severe, causing injuries, displacement, and making it harder for people to get health care. The spread of infectious diseases will change as warming temperatures create new breeding grounds for disease carriers. We'll see food shortages as droughts and floods affect agriculture. And people will struggle with the mental health impacts of dealing with climate change, stress, and trauma.
Wow, that's a lot to consider. It makes it clear that climate change isn't just a problem for the future. It's affecting us right now. Are these effects felt equally everywhere, or are some groups more vulnerable?
Unfortunately, it's not equal. Vulnerable populations like children, the elderly, those living in poverty, and those in low-income countries are hit the hardest. Things like limited access to healthcare, poor infrastructure, and being geographically vulnerable to climate hazards all make it worse.
It's a reminder that climate change is a social justice issue, too. It makes existing inequalities worse and threatens those who are already the most vulnerable.
The article stresses the need to act now to slow down climate change, cut greenhouse gas emissions, and prepare for the changes we can avoid. We need governments, businesses, communities, and individuals all working together to protect both our planet and our health.
It's a global challenge that needs a global response.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go back to artificial intelligence and look at the ethics of using it in healthcare decision-making.
This article, AI and Ethics, Navigating the Moral Maze, by a group of bioethicists and computer scientists, dives into those tricky ethical questions that come up as AI becomes more common in healthcare.
We talked earlier about how AI has amazing potential, but also comes with challenges. What are some of the key ethical concerns this article brings up?
There are a few main things. First, we need to make sure AI algorithms are fair and don't have biases built in. Second, we need to protect patient privacy and keep their information confidential. Third, humans need to be in control and accountable for the decisions being made, even when AI is involved. And lastly, we have to think about the possibility of people losing jobs and economic inequality as AI changes the healthcare workforce.
Can you go into more detail about those concerns? How would those ethical dilemmas actually play out in the real world?
Okay, imagine an AI algorithm is used to decide who's eligible for a specific treatment or organ transplant. If that algorithm learned from biased data, it could worsen existing inequalities in healthcare, making it harder for certain groups to get treatment based on their race, ethnicity, or how much money they have.
That's a really important point. It shows how crucial it is to carefully examine the data used to train these AI algorithms and make sure it represents everyone fairly. What about patient privacy? AI systems are looking at huge amounts of health data. How do we make sure sensitive information is protected?
That's essential. We need strong data privacy and security measures to keep patient information safe from being used in the wrong way. Patients should have control over how their data is used, and they should know the risks and benefits of letting their data be used for AI research.
It's about finding the right balance between using AI to make medical progress while also protecting people's rights and privacy. And what about the human element in decision-making? Are we at risk of relying too much on algorithms and losing that human touch in medicine?
The article is clear that AI should help humans make decisions, not make decisions for them. Human oversight is critical to make sure AI is used ethically and well. Doctors and other healthcare professionals need to understand how AI works, what its limitations are, and what biases might be hidden in the algorithms.
So it's about giving healthcare professionals the knowledge and tools to use AI responsibly, not letting it replace their own judgment and compassion. What about the possibility of jobs being lost because of AI? As AI gets more sophisticated, are healthcare workers going to be replaced by machines?
It's a legitimate concern, and one we need to address head-on. AI can automate certain tasks, but it can also create new opportunities in healthcare. The key is to embrace a future where AI and human workers collaborate, each bringing their unique strengths to the table.
So it's about preparing the healthcare workforce for the future. We need training programs that give them the skills to work alongside AI and adapt as healthcare changes. Now, let's transition from the ethical considerations of AI to the potential of personalized medicine.
This article, Personalized Medicine, Tailoring Treatment to the Individual by a team of geneticists and clinicians, explores how we can use a person's unique genetic information, lifestyle, and environment to personalize their healthcare.
I've heard of personalized medicine, but it still feels a bit futuristic to me. Can you explain it in a way that's easy for someone who's not a scientist to understand?
Think of it as moving away from a one-size-fits-all approach to healthcare. Instead of giving everyone the same treatment, personalized medicine looks at your unique characteristics to decide the best course of action for you.
It's like precision medicine, considering all the things that make each of us different. Where is personalized medicine making a difference right now?
It's already impacting cancer treatment. Genetic testing can identify specific mutations in a tumor, and that information helps doctors choose drugs that are more likely to be effective against that specific type of cancer.
Wow, it's like personalized cancer therapy targeting the weaknesses of the tumor. That's amazing.
Yep.
Are there other examples?
Definitely. In drug development, personalized medicine is helping to create more targeted therapies for specific groups of patients based on their genes or other individual factors. This leads to treatments that work better and have fewer side effects.
What about preventing disease? Can personalized medicine identify people who are more likely to get certain diseases?
Absolutely. By analyzing someone's genes, lifestyle, and environmental exposures, we can see who might be at higher risk of developing conditions like heart disease or diabetes. This allows us to intervene earlier, maybe suggesting lifestyle changes or preventive medications, which could lower their risk and even stop the disease from developing.
It's a proactive approach to healthcare, focusing on prevention and early intervention rather than just reacting when someone gets sick. I imagine there are some challenges in bringing personalized medicine to everyone, though, right?
You're right. The cost and complexity of genetic testing, protecting data privacy and security, and the ethical questions around using genetic information are all hurdles we need to overcome.
It's another reminder that with every exciting new scientific development, we have to think carefully about the ethical and social implications. Now, let's move from genetics to a broader look at the social factors that influence health.
This article, Social Determinants of Health, Shaping Our Well-Being, written by public health experts, steps back from individual factors like genes and lifestyle. It explores how the conditions in which people are born, grow up, live, work, and age can have a huge impact on their health.
I've heard the term social determinants of health, but I'm not sure I fully understand it. Can you break it down for me?
Imagine a person's life is like a tapestry woven from threads of different colors and textures. Social determinants of health are the threads that represent things like income, education, housing, access to healthcare, and social support.
So these are the outside factors, the environmental and societal conditions that can shape a person's health, even if they make healthy choices.
Exactly. The article argues that these social determinants play a huge role in our health, affecting how long we live, our risk of chronic diseases, and even our mental well-being.
Can you give me some real-world examples of how social determinants can affect someone's health? How do these factors actually show up in people's lives?
Let's say there are two people who have the same genetic risk for heart disease. One person lives in a wealthy neighborhood with access to healthy food, safe places to exercise, and good health care. The other person lives in a poor neighborhood where it's hard to find healthy food, crime makes it dangerous to exercise outside, and affordable health care is limited.
It's obvious that even with the same genetic risk, their environments make a huge difference in their health. It's like they're playing the same game with different sets of rules.
Exactly. The article highlights the need to address these social determinants of health to truly create a fair and just healthcare system where everyone has the opportunity to thrive.
It's about leveling the playing field and making sure everyone has a chance to be healthy. Okay, let's dive into a fascinating area of research that's revealing the link between our gut microbiome and our brain.
This article, The Gut-Brain Connection, How Microbes Influence Our Mood, by neuroscientists and microbiologists, explores the growing understanding that our gut and our brain are in constant communication, and the microbiome is a key player in that conversation.
I've heard about the gut-brain connection, but I'm still a bit fuzzy on how it works. What's the actual mechanism behind this communication?
It's a complex system with multiple pathways involved, including the nervous system, the immune system, and the endocrine system. They all work together to send messages between the gut and the brain. And right in the middle of all this is the microbiome, with its trillions of microorganisms.
So these tiny organisms in our gut can actually affect our thoughts, feelings, and actions. That's wild.
It is, and the research is still ongoing, but the evidence is getting stronger. The article mentions studies that show a link between what's in the gut microbiome and mental health conditions like anxiety, depression, and even autism.
It's like our gut is a second brain, influencing our mental well-being. What does this mean for treating mental health? Are we talking about new therapies that target the gut microbiome?
Researchers are definitely looking into that. They're exploring things like fecal microbiota transplantation, probiotics, and prebiotics, basically trying to change the gut microbiome to improve mental health.
So instead of just focusing on the brain, we might be able to treat mental health issues by changing the bacteria in our gut. That's a whole new way of thinking about mental health.
It's exciting research, but it's still early days. We need more research to fully understand how the gut microbiome and the brain talk to each other and to develop therapies that are safe and effective.
It's amazing to see how much we're learning about the human body and how everything is interconnected. What can people do right now to help their gut microbiome and maybe even improve their mental health?
The article recommends a holistic approach. Focus on things that promote a healthy gut microbiome. Eat a varied diet with plenty of fiber, include fermented foods, manage stress, and try to avoid unnecessary antibiotics, which can throw off the balance of bacteria in your gut.
It's another reminder that our choices impact our health in so many ways. Now let's move from the tiny world of the gut microbiome to the cutting edge of regenerative medicine.
This next article, Stem Cells, the Body's Repair Kit, by a group of stem cell researchers, takes us into a world where we're learning to use the body's own healing power to regenerate damaged tissues and organs.
I've heard of stem cells, but I'm not really sure what they are or why they're so important. Can you explain it simply?
Stem cells are like the body's master builders. They can develop into any type of cell in the body. Think of them as blank slates that can become specialized cells like heart cells, brain cells, or skin cells.
So they're like the body's raw materials, ready to transform into whatever cells are needed to repair or replace damaged tissues.
Exactly. That's why they're so promising for regenerative medicine, the field of medicine that focuses on repairing or replacing damaged tissues and organs.
What kinds of conditions are we talking about treating with stem cell therapy? Where is this research showing the most promise?
Stem cell therapy is showing potential in treating a wide range of conditions. Things like blood disorders like leukemia, repairing heart tissue after a heart attack, and even restoring lost vision are all being investigated.
It sounds like science fiction, the idea of regenerating damaged organs.
Yeah.
Are we really at the point where this is becoming a reality?
We're definitely making progress, but it's still a fairly new field. There are challenges like finding reliable sources of stem cells, figuring out how to safely and effectively deliver them to the right place, and making sure they integrate and function properly once they're there.
It sounds like there's still a lot to learn, but the potential benefits are huge. What about the ethical side of stem cell research?
Ethical considerations are always front and center, especially when we're talking about embryonic stem cells, which come from human embryos. We have to be very careful to conduct this research ethically and responsibly, respecting human dignity and thinking about the potential impact on future generations.
It's a reminder that science always needs to be guided by ethics. Now let's shift gears from regenerative medicine to a technology that's changing how we experience healthcare: virtual reality.
This article, Virtual Reality, A New Dimension in Healthcare, by technologists and healthcare professionals, explores how virtual reality is opening up new possibilities. It's being used to train healthcare professionals, treat mental health conditions, manage pain, and even help patients rehabilitate after injuries.
I usually think of virtual reality as something for gaming and entertainment. It's interesting to hear it has serious uses in healthcare. Can you give me some concrete examples of how it's being used to improve patient care?
One cool example is using VR to create simulations for surgical training. Surgeons can practice complex procedures in a virtual environment before operating on real patients. This helps them sharpen their skills and makes things safer for patients.
It's like a flight simulator for surgeons, letting them practice in a safe and controlled space.
That's amazing. What about mental health? How's VR being used to treat conditions like phobias and PTSD? VR can create these safe, controlled environments where patients can face their fears and traumas. For example, someone who's scared of heights could gradually be exposed to virtual heights, helping them overcome their fear in a controlled way.
It's like exposure therapy, but in a virtual world. That's fascinating. What about managing pain? How can VR help people cope with pain?
VR can distract patients from pain during medical procedures or while they're recovering from injuries. It can also help people with chronic pain by giving them coping mechanisms and relaxation techniques in a virtual world.
It's like using technology to create a mental escape from pain, making the experience more manageable. And what about rehab? How's VR being used to help people recover from things like injuries or strokes?
VR can create interactive environments that encourage movement and exercise, which is really helpful for people recovering from strokes or injuries. For example, someone recovering from a stroke could use a VR system to practice reaching for objects or walking, helping them rebuild their strength and coordination.
It's using technology to make rehab more engaging and fun, which can motivate people to keep working towards recovery. It's amazing to see all the different ways VR is being used in healthcare.
It's definitely a growing field with tons of potential to make patient care better and create these immersive, engaging healthcare experiences. Now, let's go back to personalized medicine and really dig into the ethical side of genetic testing.
We've talked before about how exciting personalized medicine is, but it also comes with some tough ethical questions. What are some things we need to think about as we move into this new era of healthcare?
This article, Genetic Testing, The Promise and Peril of Personalized Medicine by bioethicists and geneticists, brings up several big challenges. Making sure everyone has fair access to genetic testing and personalized treatments, protecting people's genetic privacy, preventing discrimination based on someone's genes, and dealing with the emotional impact of learning about your genetic risks.
Let's break those down one by one. Why is it so important for everyone to have access to these new advancements?
Well, genetic testing and personalized treatments can be really expensive. There's a risk that only wealthy people will be able to afford these potentially life-changing treatments, making existing health disparities even worse.
So it's about making sure that everyone benefits from personalized medicine, no matter how much money they have or what their insurance covers. What about genetic privacy? Why is it crucial to protect this type of information?
Genetic information is incredibly personal and sensitive. It's not just about you. It also reveals things about your family members who share your genes. It's crucial to keep this information safe and prevent it from being used against someone.
Can you give me an example of how someone could be discriminated against based on their genes?
Imagine someone is denied health insurance or a job because their genes show they're at risk for a certain disease. That would be a violation of their rights and could have a huge negative impact on their life.
That's a scary thought. We need to make sure that genetic information is used ethically and that people are protected from discrimination. What about the emotional impact of genetic testing? Learning about your genetic predispositions can be heavy stuff.
You're right. Imagine being told you're genetically predisposed to a serious illness, even if you're perfectly healthy right now. It could create a lot of anxiety, fear, and even a feeling of inevitability.
It shows how important genetic counseling is. People need help processing this information and making informed choices about their health.
Absolutely. Genetic counseling can help people understand their test results, explain their options, and make decisions that fit their values and goals. It's about empowering people with knowledge and support, not just giving them a bunch of scary information.
Makes sense.
And that feels like the perfect note to end on. We've covered so much in this issue of the Lancet, global health trends, groundbreaking research, the ethical challenges facing medicine. It's been quite a journey.
It really has. And it's a journey that doesn't end here. We encourage everyone listening to keep exploring, keep questioning, keep learning.
Until next time, stay curious.